Welcome. I am Captain Crazy,
And I'm Princess.
and this is our RWBY review for Volume 4, Chapter 4. So last week they actually did a non-chapter week where they just did a...
World of Remnant is what it's called.
that's it. And they just explain a little bit of the lore of part of the world. It didn't really show much that we didn't already know, so...
A lot of what they had discussed in it was already covered in Chapter 1. It was also only 4 minutes long, so we didn't do a review on that one.
Yeah, so that's why there was not a review last week for anybody that's not up to date with the show yet. But yes, this week's show, very story driven. Pushes the story along with multiple character perspectives. I think this is the most different character
We've seen in a chapter.
Yeah, it was also a very long chapter. I believe it was 22 minutes with all the opening and cutscenes, so you're looking at about 19 minutes. So they are almost the length of a normal show again. So in comparison to the very first volume where they were 6 to 12 minutes, where each week you got like a 6 minute of a full 12-minute chapter. Now they're full as if it were a regular production, or regular TV production.
It's going to make for a very long DVD, like when you do like the full play as a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mind you, I think then there will actually be less overall...
less overall chapters, probably.
Exactly. Well, not necessarily less chapters.
Split into.
They did part 1, part 2.
Yeah.
So it probably be a little longer on the runtime for this this volume. I got myself. Barely, but I did. Give me a break. We had last week off. So yes, very character driven, very story driven. There's one scene that has any action in it, and it's very brief. Very brief. I mean, like 2 seconds brief of action. But very dramatic, and it...
You learn some interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it moves the story along quite a bit in many different paths.
So we actually start back at the farm that we had seen in Chapter 1 with the farm boy, who we find out his name is called Oscar. He just kind of wanders past a mirror and looks at it puzzled and plays with his hair a little bit, and then
he kind of... He thinks he saw something, and he's not quite sure, and he goes to turn away, and then Osman kind of talks to him through the mirror. And then he falls back into a haymow, and then his mom calls to him and tells him to be careful with the tools. And that's all we get to see about the farm. So
it's very odd. Like, is he actually talking through the mirror,
or did he go back in time through a mirror? Is that part of his powers, or part of the relic that we hear about a little bit later? It's hard to tell. Or did he go back in time, maybe?
or is Ozpin Oscar?
Or is Ozpin Oscar?
He does have similar hairstyle.
So it's hard to tell, and really, we won't know until we learn more, because they didn't give us a whole lot to go on.
No, like you can't even see if he's talking through the mirror. You don't see any picture of him, you just hear his voice.
So, very hard to tell at this point. We then move along to Yang basically having a nightmare where she's dreaming that she has her arms and she's about to fight
Adam.
Adam. I have mentioned I'm horrible with names. That's why I've got Princess. So yes, she goes to fight Adam, and she gets her weapons, and then all of a sudden he goes to draw his sword, and she has no arm and no weapons.
And he has an evil grin.
And yeah. Yeah. And before she lost her weapons, she fired at him a couple of times, and they went right through him, as if he were just like a hologram. And then she wakes up. And we see at that point that she actually has the fitting for the arm to attach to.
It's possible that she could have had something there before. It's just it was always covered up with her coat. But now she doesn't have her coat on, so she does actually have... Actually, it's this arm. She actually has like a metal casing so that the arm can easily hook into it.
Exactly. And so we get the impression that she has not yet put the arm on.
So she goes downstairs and she sees her father talking to two of the professors from Beacon Academy. I believe it's Professor Port and Dr. RWBY. And they're joking about, you know, times from the past and her Uncle Crow.
Who apparently got tricked by her father into wearing a skirt on the first day because, you know, uniform. And he just kind of said, hey. And then apparently all the women were like, or all the ladies and girls, I guess it'd be girls at that age, were like, you got nice legs at least. And yeah, so there's some banter about that and reminiscing about old times and whatnot. And then...
So Yang walks in on this and, you know, actually smiles for the first time since the accident.
Or
so
the first time that we see her.
The first time that we see her kind of give a chuckle.
And the teachers are all uptight and not kind of sure if they can continue to laugh or if it's appropriate. And they tell her to take up a chair and she just plops herself down on the counter and, no, I'm fine. And then her father just keeps going, keeps telling the story, and then eventually they get to a point where they ask if she had tried the arm on, and no, she hadn't, and because she was afraid. And then they go into a story about how fear is or everybody has fear basically, but it's how you deal with said fear, and that Professor Port is actually afraid of mice. And then basically her dad tells her she needs to grow up and get ready for the real world, and that she can be what she wants to be, she just needs to put her mind to it. And
it's good advice, you know.
Yeah.
They have like an interesting relationship, kind of joking at times. There's a point where, you know, he kind of is a little mean, but they laugh it off. And everybody else in the room is like, I don't know how to react to this. Is this going to blow up or...
Yeah, literally cup drop.
Instead of mic drop?
Yeah.
I can't believe you actually said that.
And the exact quote, I believe, is, you must have lost some brain cells when you lost that arm of yours, to which the professors both stare blankly and literally cup drop down to the table, the coffee cup. So, but she just kind of chuckled and gave him a little Actually, it was, sorry. Too soon. So yeah, and then they just chuckle it off, and then she goes upstairs to bed, and they exit outside, and she kind of overhears them talking, and one of the professors asks if any word had been about Ruby and whether or not her father had any thoughts of going to make sure she was okay or to protect her. And he said he had other things to deal with, and kind of looked up to where Yang's room was, which I think kind of spurred Yang on. Then we cut away to RWBY.
Yes.
Yes, that makes more sense too, because they mentioned RWBY and then we talk about RWBY. Yes. So we cut to RWBY and her trying to read the map, and then we kind of see that she can't read the name too well. And it turns out to be some sort of well-protected resort-y type town. And when they walk into it, it looks very much like the Inn of the Pouncing Pony. I can't remember what the hell's the name of that town. I can't remember what the name of that town is in Lord of the Rings. This is horrendous.
Shameful.
I know. We only watch it 3 times a year. Actually, we haven't watched it this year. Damn it. Now we need to watch Lord of the Rings. Okay, but anyways. Before they get to that town, though, we see Crow smash a Grimm that was just about to attack them right through the midsection with his sword. And you see a litter of Grimm behind him where he's already stabbed them. And Ruby and the group joke about the fact that, oh, we haven't seen very many Grimm. We must be lucky.
Lucky, right? They're lucky to have Uncle Crow watching out for them.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so then we get to the town, and we see Crow.
Team Ranger check into the inn, and Crow is at the bar across the street.
Yep. He sits down, and then one of the the wenches, we'll call them wenches. Hey, we go to medieval times. They are wenches. So one of the wenches comes up and has a drink for him, and tells him that it was from the red-eyed lady upstairs, and that he would be okay with the bottom of the shelf, or the bottom shelf, and
assuming that's like the cheapest quality stuff, and yeah.
He kind of goes, at that, and then she tells him that I took it from the top shelf, though. And then he gives her the biggest grin.
Silly grin, yeah.
And so he takes his drink and goes upstairs, and he knows what's coming. So he sees his sister Raven.
Who is Yang's mother.
Right.
Yes. We've seen her before in one of the previous volumes. Very briefly.
And then there's some banter back and forth about family and how Raven isn't doing anything about the fact that Yang lost an arm, and that she doesn't
even
care.
Inquiring about how she's doing or coping with the fact that she no longer has an arm.
Exactly. And that this isn't just a friendly sister coming to see how her brother's doing.
She's there on business.
So he's basically just tells her to get to the point, in which she asks about whether or not she has it. And then there's some more banter back and forth, basically him saying that,
we need you.
Yeah, we need to be unified together. And she has a new family, which is the tribe that apparently raised her and Crow.
And she is now the leader of this tribe.
And he left this because they were a bunch of murderers and thieves. Well, turns out that they're the bandits that hit the town that was in volume 2? Or chapter 2?
Chapter 2.
It was chapter 2.
Yes.
Yeah, so the town that got raided in chapter 2 by bandits, that was Raven's band of bandits. And he also mentions that there's somebody of significant power besides herself, because they
we
did
have not yet seen.
a lot of damage, and it wasn't done by Grimm.
Or her.
Or her, yeah. And then there's some more banter back and forth, and so she straight out asks if Salem has the relic. And he won't give an answer. And he straight out asks her if she knows where...
the Spring Maiden is.
Yes, the Spring Maiden. I was about to say the Maiden of the Mist, but that's...
Something else.
That's something else entirely. There's a mist in spring. There's also mist in fall. I digress. Okay, so yeah, he asks her about where the Spring Maiden is, and she also does not answer, and does this weird teleporty portal thing. That's about the best way to describe it.
Apparently it's not a normal thing, because it pretty much freaked out the bar wench.
To
You got me calling her a wench now.
Yes. To which, after she smashes the glass on the floor and looks very shocked, Crow looks over and better make this one a double.
So her helmet, Raven has this grim kind of skull, I guess, that she uses as a helmet. And when Crow first comes up to her, she has it right in front of her, like dead center, and he will not sit down until she actually moves it to the side. So do you think that that's like something with their tribe, that's a greeting of some sorts, or a power struggle, or like, what's your thoughts on that?
My guess is it might be the Grimm that killed their parents. So that is the skull of the Grimnet.
That's a pretty grim outlook.
And she wears it on her head. That's, I don't know.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah. That's my thoughts on it. What about you?
My thoughts are kind of, if it's right directly in front of you, that's more like of an enemy. If it's to the side, then it's, more of a welcoming opening,
Possible. It's possible.
So, when they're having discussions, if it's right in front, then that means one thing. If it's to the side, it means something else.
We'll have to see in the
On
future.
a negotiation table,
Stay tuned to further episodes to find out who's right.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we're both completely off base.
Which is completely possible. Because we were completely wrong about what happens with Yang in the arm.
Mm-hmm.
We were hoping that, she'd have to face some sort of battle or trial and be in a position where she's forced to put it on. However, what happens...
As we cut back to Yang, is she comes down the next day with the arm on, and her dad says, okay, now we can start. And by that, I mean, I think she's going to train so that she knows how to use said arm so that...
she can defend herself
and they
and
can
attack.
go look after RWBY, essentially, and go help RWBY.
Yeah. I think the reason that she snapped out of it was basically purely RWBY. Not even for her father's sake, but for RWBY's sake, to know that, she's out there on her own, and what's holding her dad back from going to help protect her is that she needs protection right now.
A lot more than RWBY, who has full use and whatnot. And Yang doesn't know, probably, that Crow is hot on their heels and
Protecting
watching
them, then.
yeah, literally wiping out forests full of Grim. But yeah,
Secretly, too, so they have no idea that Crow is following them.
and then that's how the chapter ends.
Yep.
Like I said at the beginning, very dramatic, different story elements. We see, four different points of view, essentially. So we're following four different groups of characters. I think that's the most we've ever seen in an episode, unless it's just a quick little tidbit.
I want to know more about the farm boy. Hurry up already. Stop teasing us.
Makes more sense, though, if the scene in one of the previous chapters where Salem had reason to doubt Ospen was dead, so she must know something, and makes...
He's coming. He's making an appearance of some sorts. He's coming back somehow.
Yep.
Just not sure how yet.
So, that is all for this week's review of RWBY, Volume 4, Chapter 4.
Called Family.
Called Family. I am Captain Crazy.
And I'm Princess.
And we'll see you next week. Unless it's another World of Remnant, but hopefully not. Another chapter.